Coming up this week ahead, we've come so far, but we still have a way to go. Why looking back 10 years may help some of us remember the strength that we gained. I'll talk to the mayor about the anniversary of the 2011 flood. Plus, new traffic signals, new pavement markings, and new road surfaces will impact your route this week ahead. We'll tell you where. And the kickoff to a summer of reading is a day and change away. Let's talk about it this week ahead. Now, I was listening to a podcast, This American Life, and the host, Ira Glass, he said something very interesting towards the end. Sort of an anecdotal piece of information, but it resonated for our topic today. Each year, the atoms in your body replace themselves. That means you're not the same person you were a year ago. The molecules that make you up physically are brand new, or at least mostly brand new. And you didn't even notice. You didn't notice because it happens just a little bit at a time. You're too caught up in what you're doing or where you're going that you don't know that you've changed. Also, you can't see the atoms in your body, but don't let that fact skew my point that I'm trying to make. So if you're only 2% of who you were 1 year ago, molecularly, imagine how much of you as a person has changed in 10 years. That change, if you look back at it now, might be quite a bit more obvious. You can probably stop and think about yourself 10 years ago and witness exactly how much you've grown, how much you've matured or improved. The difference is stark because enough time has passed to truly see that change. This week ahead, you can expect to hear more about reflecting on the change. We'll be having a community event later in June. The event is just that, reflecting on how many molecules our community has replaced since the worst natural disaster in our history. The Resilient Together, 10 years of recovery and community event will be coming up June 26th at Oak Park. We've had some community discussion on this already as council passed a budget amendment in May to contract out planning help. It may be on your radar already. We know this event isn't going to be for everyone. It's a 10-year anniversary of the crest of the 2011 flood, the worst disaster we've endured as a community. Some of you were here and remember that. Some of you may not have been. It's probably hard for many, and that's okay. But if you are up for looking at how much we've grown since our biggest disaster, please join us. Many impacted during the flood, myself included, see this as an important point for us to reflect on those changes we've made. Just to see how many pieces are new, to see how much of ourselves we managed to replace. Now let's talk more about the actual event. What is it? What are we doing? And what should we expect? I'm bringing in help, of course. This is Mayor Sean Sitma joining me now. Kind of the man behind the plan here. This, if you're familiar with his history, the flood was a big piece of who he is now today, as it is for so many Minotians across our area. Mayor, thanks for making time for me this morning.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about, I feel is a very important event for not just Minot, but for the Mouse River Basin.
So let's talk about the importance in just a second. First, I want to set the tone about what is happening on June 26th. What are we expecting? We got a whole day of activities, but give us some high-level stuff.
You bet. So June 26th, for folks that are familiar, the 10th anniversary of the 2011 Mouse River flood. So what we're looking at is an event that both is going to memorialize the disaster, the people that went through it, the resilience aspect that helped all of us move forward and rebuild all of the devastation. Not only acknowledging all of the events, but then the events leading up to, during, after, but then also moving forward in what we're really trying to accomplish as an entire basin-wide flood protection project. All of the different programs that have been and are currently in process to continue to help people, really move forward in their lives and better protect themselves from any future disasters and make our communities, plural, more resilient. So on the 26th, we're going to have an event in actually a couple of different events. Thursday night, there's going to be an event downtown that is kind of a kickoff a little bit with some live music and other activities with vendors, kind of a prelude to the 26th. Then on Friday, we're going to have a ribbon cutting down on the MI2 and MI3. That is the celebration of those portions of flood control in Minot that are now complete. Also starting at 9 o'clock then in the morning at Oak Park, a memory walk that is kind of the walk leading up to, during, and after, and what's looking forward with all the programs and flood control and things like that. So an ability for people to kind of take their time and walk through their own memories, or learn, in some cases, really what happened and what's happening. We'll have a bunch of dignitaries right around the noon hour at the amphitheater in Oak Park, memorializing the event and kind of going through everything that we just talked about. And then some live music following that for about 45 minutes for a quick transition, and then kind of a roundtable story time with a lot of the people, the who's who faces of 2011 that so many of us knew and saw during that event, to talk about, really what happened, maybe to learn some things that we didn't even know that took place in 2011. And then I believe Burlington is going to have a street dance that night, kind of their own after party that, of course, everyone's going to be invited to. But the whole point and process of this is to get people out and share in the event of the memorial and also of the celebration. Some folks I know have all different levels of feelings when it comes to the 2011 flood. And folks are encouraged to participate at their level of comfort. Some folks have a really tough time talking about it, and that's understandable. Some folks really need that point to help commemorate and celebrate how far we've come. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that here in a second, but that really is at the heart of what we're looking at coming up here. And just, it's less than a month away already. And it's been a large effort to try to put this together with so many other things that are going on, especially, post 2020. So it's I think going to be a little something for everyone, even for folks who themselves weren't affected directly from the water.
So you mentioned that this is sort of a community-driven event. This isn't just Minot specific. This is involving people from Burlington, throughout all of the counties in the basin. Why do you think that's important? That this isn't just, you're the mayor of Minot. Why aren't we just doing a Minot specific event?
Well, I think the answer to that is fairly simple. It's also the reason we're not just doing flood control in Minot. This was such a large scale event of 2011 and a large scale effort for flood control. I think it's important for everyone who is affected, whether it be Burlington, the subdivisions that are between Minot and Burlington, of course, Minot, and then our partners downstream within these projects, and that also went through it from East Side Estates all the way down to the rural folks between there and Logan to Sawyer to Velva, and back up around Towner. Everybody had different experiences through this event, and we're just as deeply affected. So I think it's important to look at this at the magnitude that it was, and share in that memorial and celebration all at the same time.
So on intro to you, I talked about this is, me looking at you, I've known you for some time, Mr. Mayor, but it's hard to think of the 2011 flood when you don't think about those faces. You mentioned there's going to be faces of 2011. You were one of those working at KX at the time, 24 hours a day, trying to pull your life together too, as we knew water was rushing towards Minot and the basin. Clearly, this is important to you. It's part of who you are now. It's a part of who we all are as a community. But this event that we're doing on the 26th of June, what prompted, what is it that makes you think that this is something we have to isolate and not celebrate? That is not the word, right? It's to recognize. Yeah. What was it that made you decide, okay, let's do something?
Each year, for a lot of us who went through what we did in 2011, each year this is kind of in some cases, some days can be difficult around this May to June timeframe as it all leads up. And I think it has to be part of the healing process for the folks that had water and the folks also that went out of their way to lend an unbelievable special hand to help out everyone that was going through what they were going. I think we absolutely have to memorialize this event because it's also important to understand why we're doing what we're doing with flood control. Some folks, the memory fades. Other folks have moved here since and don't know, don't understand. And I think it's important that we also capture and memorialize all of the events that led up to, during, and after. And that old adage, if you don't learn from history and don't choose to remember what has happened in the past, oftentimes we're only doomed to repeat it. So in many cases, that's just as much of a part of this. I think for a lot of folks, this is also points of healing. We've made a special effort all through the valley, especially in Minot, to work so hard to erase what the damage was done by the Mouse River, and whether that be zombie homes, whether that be getting neighborhoods cleaned up, getting the river cleaned up, and working towards the enhanced flood protection project, and that's been a tremendous effort. And considering everything that's happened since then, it's no shortage of almost a miracle to see how far that we've come as Minot and as a basin with this project. I mean, we're talking about $1.08 billion flood control project for a community, for a region our size. That's tremendous. And we've still got a ways to go, and we still have a lot of programs that are working towards helping people, continue with that healing process or get out of the way of, any potential disaster regarding the river. So that really, when it all kind of comes together, is exceptionally important to, remember the past, memorialize it, but also celebrate our successes. And that's sometimes often kind of forgotten about a little bit in today's society. We have to acknowledge the hard work and the dedication, the resiliency that has got us to where we're at today, but also the understanding that we still have a ways to go.
And that's really important. I love what you mentioned there, because this isn't about the 2011 flood. This is about everything since then. We are cutting a ribbon on phases 2 and 3 of flood control, 2 phases of 8, as we are working for federal appropriations to phase 4. We got underground work already going just by City Hall here. Mm-hmm. And we're working on designs for 6 and 7. The progress that we have. People compare us to Grand Forks a lot, which is almost an unfair comparison, right? They put up flood control after the 97 flood in record time. They did it in the time frame that we're looking at now. What we should do is look at Grand Forks and what Fargo's doing. Fargo is still trying to build flood protection for the exact same flood that hit them as it hit Grand Forks. We are making great pace. But that being said, this is important to remember for so many, but there's still people that are struggling, Mr. Mayor. There's still people that have not healed from the turmoil that happened 10 years ago. Are we considering those people when we're talking about this event?
Absolutely. And that was one of the concerns that one of the aldermen had brought up during one of the meetings is, unsure of if we should be celebrating. And it's both all at once. I just talked about the importance of why we need to acknowledge the past and celebrate our successes. But understandably, there are still a lot of folks that are psychologically and financially very much impacted by 2011. And keep in mind too, as we work through the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Project in Minot, we're still acquiring homes. MI5, we're going to be acquiring some homes that maybe weren't damaged by flood, maybe had some sewer backup because of the secondary levee system that was along 4th and Railroad Avenues in 2011. So we still have homes to acquire there. And then as we work through MI6, 7, and 8, those are homes that we're going to be buying out 10, 15, maybe even more years after that. So when we talk about long-term healing, this this program for the 10th anniversary isn't a finality when it comes to acknowledging how far we have yet to go as a community, as a basin. So I think as a city, putting on the other hat, we really have to push hard and fast to try to give some people some finality to when those acquisitions are going to come. And that's understandable. And those are very, very difficult, especially for those folks who maybe have lived in those homes all their lives or rebuilt that house, as most did, with their own blood, sweat, and tears. That it's also important to acknowledge the sacrifice that comes along with these projects, for the safety and security of the community. I mean, we look back to 2011, everyone was impacted by 2011. The city was cut in half. We were under a boil order for more than 40 days, 45 days, if I remember correctly. Emergency services were limited and cut off in some areas. We can't afford as a community to endure a disaster like that again, or multiple instances, anything similar to that. So it's a big picture issue. And it's also understandable that post-traumatic stress that impacts many, it's understandable that once we go through this memorial kind of gathering and then celebration of the resiliency, some folks may not be comfortable and may not want to attend. And as I stated in that council meeting, no one is going to think any less of anyone who isn't able to. We certainly hope that as many people share in this event as possible. But there is a tremendous amount wrapped up into this 2011 event. And I think we can all acknowledge it's different for everybody. As we stated all those years ago, as we were doing our round the clock coverage when I was a newscaster, it was a different story for every single person in Minot, in the basin, and it was a different story after as well. So, and that very much is the same way in the healing process moving forward.
50,000, roughly. That was an oil boom time, so it might have been 60, 70,000 people impacted at one time, just within our city alone. But 50,000 people, 50,000 different impacts. That's why we're kind of centralizing this to Oak Park. We're not going to be blasting sirens across the city. Very sensitive to that. But there's something for a lot of people that are comfortable with remembering what happened 10 years ago. Mr. Mayor, real quickly, when I say 2011 flood, what is the one memory that pops in your mind first? What's your first go-to memory from 10 years ago?
My first go-to memory, of course, I was a journalist at that time. There was really two components of this: my family and my community. And that's really what it boiled down to, as I had two jobs that I immediately had to task. And that was get my family out of harm's way. And also knowing that I had some tremendous family that came in to help me with my evacuation, because I was out telling the story of the community and helping people get as much information as they could. Many people have asked kind of that same question of, how did you feel? And I kind of threw all of my feelings aside. I had to. And I think that's how I dealt with it. But it was family and community. That's how I felt. That was the first thing that popped into my mind when I took that phone call that morning, that my home was going to be destroyed, and that my community, my friends, many relatives even were flooded and impacted. So it's very real to me yet, even to this day. I've processed and dealt with it in my own way. And I think many people also have. And I encourage anybody else who still is having problems processing their feelings, to reach out and talk to somebody. That's just as important in any process in healing. But family and community, and it's amazing how that carried through. That was a sign for the community, because we had so many people in the community that reached out to friends, family, neighbors, strangers, and helped out. So in many ways, that kind of transcends 2011.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time. That's the Resilient Together commemoration of the 10-year anniversary of the 2011 flood. June 26th, a full day of events, starting off with recognizing the beautiful work that SRJB did with phases 2 and 3. We got us a brand new wheel links, a wonderful walking path that is very busy, transforming our city. 2011 flood, transforming our city for better or for worse in many cases. Remembering where we were then, how far we've come, and where we're going. All right, Mr. Mayor, anything else you'd like to add for us?
Derek, I appreciate the opportunity, and I truly hope a lot of people do, with their ability to come out and take a look, do a little bit of remembering, and maybe even for me, I would like to see some of the folks that weren't flooded themselves but helped out, if nothing more, to even say thank you for all that has happened in that time and moving forward, and learn a lot more about what our community truly is capable. Minot is an amazing community, and we don't want to let just the times of adversity bring that out in us. So I certainly hope as many people can make it out, and with some of the faces and remembrance of 2011, and also where the Magic City, the Mouse River Basin, is heading.
All right, this is Mayor Sean Sitma once again on the 10-year anniversary event coming up this month, or this next month. We're still in May here, but June is rapidly
Right
approaching.
around the corner.
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your time. If nothing else, well, coming up this week ahead, a lot more of the same from a detour and project standpoint. Burdick near the hospital will continue to be head-to-head traffic for, well, weeks, right? North of that, First Street on 15th Avenue near the Sertoma Softball Complex will be closed as that road is being converted to handle quite a bit more traffic in anticipation for the construction of the Magic City Discovery Center. They're getting the whole works up there. And good news, sort of, is this week ahead, you'll see brand new pavement markings all throughout town starting up. It's a lot earlier than we usually get them, so that'll be kind of a nice change for this year. Compounding on that good news, the traffic signals on West Burdick and 16th Street should be tied up sometime this week ahead, cleaning up that intersection, making it a little bit easier, taking away those temporary signals at that intersection. Finally, be mindful of the work near City Hall and the public library as part of the flood control phase 4. Access to the library is limited right now on 2nd Avenue anyway. To anyone coming from the west, you can't do that. You gotta come around from the east to get into the library parking lot. You need to take 1st Avenue. That's near that Ike Keating's building. For the rest of the lane and road closures, of course, use our map. That's online. It's very easy, very interactive. It'll show you everything closed and the things that are happening this week ahead. That's minotnd.org/road closures. Also, if you're interested to see what's all coming up this construction season, that map's up as well, minotnd.org/projects. You can see what's on queue and what's coming our way and sort of the details on all of that. Now, this week ahead is also the kickoff to the summer reading program at the Minot Public Library. That's June 1st, and we'll have, live music. Some community organizations will be at the library talking about all the programs that they have coming this summer. You can learn about all the awards that you can get just for reading. The kickoff event is Tuesday, 2 to 3:30 at the Minot Public Library. Okay, that will do it for me this week ahead. Of course, make sure you tune into everything we're doing on social media. You find us on all of your favorite social media platforms. That's at City of Minot. Little programming note, I will not be doing this this next week. I'm going to take a little bit of a short week. Take the time off, and so you can expect me in about 2 weeks from now. We'll be back, of course. Until then, enjoy this week ahead.